What's up, guys? I'm Thomas Edwards. I want to welcome you to episode 9 of the Professional Wingman podcast. I'm your host, Thomas Edwards. We are here because we enjoy helping high achievers, entrepreneurs, and professionals live iconic lives. And I'm excited to have another friend on this show. He and I connected years back, and just energetically, we had a good vibe. We got each other, and we've stayed in touch since. And when I saw him, pop up in my feed talking about something that he was doing on a world stage, I got super excited. And I was like, he's a guy that I definitely need to have on my podcast, but it would also be great to catch up with him. Let's roll into the intro. I'm beyond thrilled to welcome who I would call a true icon of mental prowess, a master of memory, whose feats have astounded audiences nationwide and globally. Our guest is none other than John Graham, 3-time USA memory champion. And he's someone who, just kind of getting to know him and watching what he does, has redefined the boundaries of human cognitive abilities. And his journey into the realm of memory sports began with the curiosity that soon turned into an extraordinary career, which he has since retired from. And we'll get into that for sure. With his unparalleled dedication and relentless pursuit of excellence, he's claimed numerous national titles, setting records and raising the bar for athletes across the U.S. His incredible ability to memorize vast amounts of information, from long sequences of random numbers to entire decks of cards, is a testament to his exceptional talent and hard work. Now, beyond his competitive achievements, he's a passionate advocate for the power of memory techniques to transform lives. He has shared his expertise through books, workshops, programs, speaking engagements, appearances on TV around the world, inspiring countless people to unlock their own mental potential. I'm excited to go into this as a brainiac myself in my own right, but also to get in the heart of a true champion. He's also an amazing father and a 3-time dad. Please join me in welcoming John Graham. What's up, brother?
I think 3 is my lucky number. 3 girls, 3 championships. Yeah. Thank you.
That's right.
Awesome.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much. I've been really excited to have you on. I've been talking to so many people about it because the brain is, I think, still one of the most underrated things that we have in our existence today. I think we've heard the phrase, we're only using a small portion, a fraction of our mental capacity. But then there's people like you who are able to find ways to extend that capacity and be able to perform on many stages and claim national titles. And, as someone who likes to get on stage and give talks and be put on the spot, I tend to thrive on those conditions, but it's not without the feelings of anxiety. And sometimes I get in a situation where I may forget things. And I've noticed when I work with my clients, the first thing that ends up going wrong, so to speak, when they're put under the test is their memory. They somehow forget so many things, like how to communicate, how to carry conversation. Anything that they've rehearsed or planned for goes out the window. They forget names. Simple directions. All that tends to go away with anxiety, but you've found ways to overcome that, not without great challenge, but able to overcome that and compete on just amazing levels. And so I want to get into all of that, but why don't we get started from the beginning? How did we get here? Where multiple time national champion, where did the interest come from? How did you even get into this?
Yeah, most people don't know about the competitive world of memory, and people assume I've got like a photographic memory, which is not true at all. It's 100% trained memory. So I read a book 10 years ago. So I was 27 years old, and read a book called Moonwalking with Einstein, The Art and Science of Remembering Everything. And it was a book that captured my soul. It just grabbed me. I had to buy it. I had to read it. And it talked about ordinary people learning mental techniques, visualization, imagination, story, memory palace, if you've heard of that. just to remember massive amounts of information, insane amounts, like decks of cards in seconds. Like, just for context, I've memorized a deck of cards, like 52 cards in order, by looking at them for 21 and a half seconds
Wow.
in a competition, in a world championship. So it shows what's possible with the mind. Like, obviously that's not practical, but it's insanely cool. And like, you can apply that to other areas of life, but that's where it all started, was from a book, and just like taking it. That was the only memory book I ever read. People ask me all the time, give me memory books to read. I'm like, stop freaking reading books and just do it, you know? So
Yeah. Well, I love that, man. I mean, and I think that makes sense, right? You just automatically assume, you're standing, you're looking at things and things going into lockers, and it's like you have that photographic memory, but you're saying that's not it. It's actually trained through techniques and I'm sure frameworks. But the training part, that part I get really fascinated by, because your brain's a muscle, right? And so it can get stronger the more that you train it. And so what got you into the idea of pushing the boundaries of your brain and strengthening its muscles?
Yeah. It's just something that excited me. I mean, in memory, you can time yourself. How fast can you memorize a deck of cards? How fast can you memorize an 80-digit number? Like, these are actual online things you can do in a minute. There's a website called Memory League, where you can see like how fast you are, and you can improve on that. Like, it literally, you compete against yourself, track it. I've always been a data guy. I love data. I love crunching numbers. I love seeing progress. And it was like something I could do to improve myself and work on myself and not really worry about others. Cause I've loved team sports my whole life, but I've always wanted to put the burden on me, like all me, like a solo training, kind of like a tennis player, or like, someone who does it on their own. That fit me well. So yeah, I learned I could do it. I memorized a deck of cards in 6 minutes the first time I ever attempted it. So showing it's a 10-year journey, right?
Yeah.
And I just thought, I want to get better. I want to get faster. There was an award, actually the award behind me, the Grandmaster of Memory certificate, was the first carrot at the end of the stick that I tried to chase. There were 3 criteria to get that. You had to memorize, in a world championship, you had to memorize 10 decks of cards in an hour. You had to memorize 1,000 digits in an hour, and 1 deck of cards in under 2 minutes. If you got that trifecta, you got that certificate, and you were a grandmaster of memory, like a grandmaster of chess. I wanted that award. I wanted people to admire me and look cool and, whatever, but I failed miserably. And you talk about performance pressure. I knew the techniques, but I sat down at that world championship. There's like 200 people in the room. It's dead silent. It's a 3-day competition, 10 events. And the first event was, I had to memorize names and faces for 30 minutes or 15 minutes, sorry. The whole time I'm sitting there, my heart is pounding out of my chest. The demons in my head are talking, like the voice in my head's going crazy. I'm feeling neurotic. My mouth is dry. Like, I almost walked out. And it was from me, like from using willpower to stay in that chair, to keep going till now. That's sort of my story, is overcoming that pressure, anxiety, right? Panic, the freeze, all this stuff, the dysregulation. But that was the start of it.
Yeah. I mean, we'll skip over like when competition kind of came in, but I totally can relate to that grandmaster status. Like, I played chess in high school, and I thought grandmasters were the coolest thing, even though we were totally made fun of and bullied about it. But I loved it. I loved the strategy of the game. It was just fun. And I'm sure there's some strategy and frameworks here too, but the performance, the anxiety, right? Being on at that level. When did you realize that, like, oh shoot, like this is a real thing? How am I going to handle it while I'm trying to use techniques and memorize what's in front of me?
Yeah, well, the first competition, the World Championships I competed in, I didn't account for pressure. I just thought, I'm going to go in there and do what I've always done in practice in the quiet. And it was a smack in the face to realize, no, like, stress is normal part of performance for everyone, really. Yeah. And so a lot of the top performers, the competitors, were helping me. They were like, no, you have to train for like they would say like 80% of your score, because you're going to feel pressure. And I didn't buy that. I didn't like that, but they would give me different recommendations of how to train. So one of the guys, Brad Zupp, who's an American, told me he trains in Starbucks. He would go memorize stuff, perform in Starbucks, with people around him. People would look at him, that like pressure. And I was like, oh, that I didn't want to do that. I was like, no. There was a guy named Ron White, who was a 2-time champion, who would train underwater. He would have a waterproof deck of cards and submerge himself underwater, holding his breath and memorizing. And he even hired a Navy SEAL to like induce chaos. And that's where I came up with the idea of chaos training, where initially I started training in the quiet of my room with like earmuffs on to block out the noise, perfect silence, perfect conditions.
Yeah.
Ideal. Oh my gosh, I wish I would have never done that. But I would train at the tail end of my career. I would train with chaos. I would literally chug a bunch of water like an hour before, so I had to pee. I would drop down and do like 20 push-ups, holding my breath as fast as I can. I would play a podcast as loud as I could in my ear, one that I wanted to listen to. And I would I would sit at the seat, hit the timer to start, and start memorizing. So here I am, like psychologically, physically, mentally, just out of sorts, like not wanting to do that. And I trained under that pressure, forcing myself to bring my attention back, because if you want to win a championship, if you want to speak on stage, if you want to do something crazy, the pressure is real. And I didn't learn, like initially I brute forced it, like with that, but I realized, and the key to overcoming pressure, and I don't even like the word overcoming it because it sounds like an adversary. You need to merge with it. You need to let it happen. You need to, some people say embrace it. I don't really like that word. I mean, whatever you want to say, but you have to allow that voltage to move through you, because you're a human being. All human beings feel this stuff, like at different levels, but you have to allow it in order for it to move through you. Otherwise, it causes massive resistance.
That's so well said. I am one to say embrace the pressure, but it's the antithesis of trying to make it not exist, right? Like it's kind of foolish to think that it doesn't exist, that the stress doesn't exist, and I think that ends up kind of sabotaging your efforts in the long run. But what you're describing, this chaos training, sounds very reminiscent of how athletes will create these conditions too. I know coaches, football coaches that will, play loud music or have white noise of crowds going crazy. So when the quarterback is trying to call plays, it's barely audible, so you can focus on that. Basketball players shooting free throws with people just kind of screaming at them, which is really what happens when you're in a real game. So many type of directions. And I love that. And I love the idea of applying that to life, just having that stress. If someone weren't trying to memorize anything, but just was struggling with being under pressure, how would you offer like a strategy or a technique to allow them to have their own chaos training?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, you do need to put in the reps to be good at something. Like you play piano over and over, you practice memory over and over to be able to bring your focus back into that repetitive muscle memory so you channel it back in. Yeah, I don't want you to induce chaos on your first piano lesson or, like things like that. You need to learn the basics too. But if someone's dealing with pressure, the best advice I can give you is to realize that it's not a mental performance issue. It's actually an emotional root issue.
Tell me more about that.
Yeah. Well, we try all this stuff. Like I did too. I suffered with anxiety for a long time and tried all the mental, it's labeled mental health, mental performance. So we treat it mentally. We try meditations. We try taking supplements for our brain, right? We're obsessed with the brain. I was obsessed with the brain. We reframe our thoughts. We focus on gratitude. We journal. We do all these mental gymnastics exercises, get yourself in state, therapy, hypnosis, all this is mental.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. It doesn't get to the root. So you're going to continue to have resistance and pressure until you get to that root, and it alchemize it into your potential, right? Literally expand your capacity to handle life. You can't handle the pressure because your container is this big, and you're trying to force yourself mentally to perform, but it's only this much to contain. So if you release the root, you literally expand your capacity to hold more life, to handle more pressure, to handle more, so it doesn't affect you. And so it's not a mental root issue. It affects you mentally, but it's deeper than that. It's an emotional root issue. Basically, what it is suppressed emotions that causes these feelings, these intense feelings. And in the performance world, as you know, we try to pump ourselves up in state. We try to, defeat those negative emotions. And that's just like pressure. You don't want to defeat it. You don't want to push it away, because it's like a pressure cooker. It will build and build and build, and it will always be there until you resolve it. And the only way to resolve it is to feel it, to face it. And so I dedicated, once I realized that shift, I poured myself into everything that was inside of me so that I could release it for good.
That's amazing. So what I'm hearing from you is the mental, everything that you talked about, it matters, but they will matter more if you're able to get to that emotional root. And it sounds like, and I know this, right? Behind every stress or fear or, experience of anxiety, there's an underlying fear. And so what for you, what was the emotional root for you? What did you end up finding and discovering when you went down there that once you found it opened up the floodgates for expansion?
Yeah, it's not just one thing. It's an accumulation of suppressed emotions. So the best way to describe this, and this makes total sense when you lay it out, is every moment or every experience in your life that you couldn't handle in that moment. Heartbreak, an embarrassment in third grade, when people laughed at you. Little things like people cutting you off in traffic. Every experience you could not handle in that moment that you didn't process out is still inside of you. And so the more you accumulate and resist, you can call it trauma. And I never liked that word trauma, because I was like, I've never experienced abuse, right? I'm not traumatized. But we all accumulate and store experiences like that. We suppress them because we don't like them. We don't handle it. And because of that, we internalize it. And it stays inside of our nervous system and our body and our cells. We literally hold it in with tension. Like if you have anxiety, if you're stressed, you are extremely tense. You're literally holding in everything that's trying to get out.
True. Yeah.
And you talk about the brain. Everyone's obsessed with the brain. I was too. But the brain's attached to your nervous system. Your nerves are a part of your brain. And that tension holds in and F's up our nervous system. We're so dysregulated. So part of it is relaxing, learning how to relax and release all of that deeply held tension to allow this stuff up and out. Because we want it out, and it wants out too. Any moment in your life that you're bothered by something, here's I'll give it to you straight. Everything that bothers you is a portal to a suppressed emotion. I call these portals to higher potential. Anytime you're bothered by something comes up, right? And what do most of us do? We scroll on our phone.
Yeah.
We go for a beer. We go work out. We don't deal with it. We take off the edge with a drink, whatever. And nothing wrong with those things, but shoves it back down. What we want is to let that up and out for good, because that literally expands your capacity to handle more of life. It alchemizes.
I love that. I love that so much, man. This is the kind of stuff that what you said right here is what I was actually talking with a client earlier today, because he has a tendency to suppress his emotions by doing other things that, if you were to look at it from an objective point of view, I'm sure are helpful to getting space away from the trigger, taking time to, regulate your nervous system. But the missing piece of it was the processing, and so unbeknownst to him, just like you said, all the things that hasn't been resolved or processed, they stay with you. And maybe subconsciously it's playing over and over in the back of your mind. And that is, I mean, from what I've seen from other psychiatrists, psychologists, and therapists, is a form of self-induced trauma. And so when you are able to feel it and release it, like you said, it creates the capacity for more. And I remember personally for me, I'll speak, pre-sobriety and then post-sobriety, but before I got sober and I would go on TV and do all these appearances, I would make the claim that I would black out. And it was because I was holding the adrenaline. I was holding the feelings of, what if I mess up? What if I say something wrong? What if if I'm not liked or they boo me or something? It just overwhelmed my nervous system. And that's why I blacked out. I just was making an excuse of saying, I said what I said. And fortunately, in my blacked out state, like, I didn't do anything that would mess anything up. But it was my inability to be present and my egocentric, preservation state. I'll put it there, right? Self-preservation was really the name of the game. I just didn't want to feel it. So I would hold on to as much as I could. And when I was able to release it, I did what you said. I went and sedated, whether it's by watching TV, scrolling on TV, drinking, using those things, celebrating, right? Using those things as a way to mask and suppress that energy. Mm-hmm. I most recently did a national TV appearance and had a similar experience. And once again, the story in my mind was like, well, it's not anxiety, it's just adrenaline getting my body ready to do what I'm supposed to do. But that was complete ignorance of like how I was feeling and what are the emotional elements of it. So I went through it again, and this time I felt all the things. Mm-hmm. Now I will admit and say that I didn't do the best job releasing them. I still held on to them, but I had the awareness that was going on, and there was that emotional part of it. And so to hear you say, like, if you can just get to that point and release it, it creates this freedom is really pivotal. And I think for a lot of people, they don't take time to process these triggers, right? And I think that's where the capacity to grow comes into play.
Yeah. I love your honesty too, because, I've been in moments like that where I froze up in moments of competition and I lied. I was like, I had a glitch in my computer. Someone walked in, I got distracted, and lied, like, because I froze up and like got overwhelmed. And the reason we got overwhelmed is because we have this capacity. And once we get poked on the inside and all this stuff comes out, it overflows. We literally can't handle it. And so we get overwhelmed, we shut down, we freeze up, all of these things, we jump into our mind. It's how we handle it, how we cope with it. And it's a normal human thing. But once you understand, like we're getting at, of like what's going on, we can start doing something about it and transmuting that energy, because that's what emotion is. It's just energy. It's a sensation, right? It is. You said, like, you label your mind. I love what you said, because you're like, is this anxiety or adrenaline? Well, both of those are a label of the mind. The mind loves to know everything.
Yeah, but really, wants to evaluate it.
Yeah, it wants to figure everything out, and the mind is what gets in the way of us releasing it. So I get asked all the time, like, okay, suppressed emotion. What do I do? How do I release it? It's like, it's really simple. It's not easy, because your mind will F this whole thing up. The hardest thing for all of my clients is the first week, because their mind just gets in the way. Our mind gets in the way of everything. Everyone, myself included. Yeah. All you do, if you have something arising, anxiety, adrenaline, to release it, right? You let go of control of your body, meaning you relax the tension because you're trying to control it. Tension is like control, you're holding it. You release control of the body, which means you relax all of those tight muscles. Your whole body's tight too when you have this going on. You'll be amazed. Mm-hmm. Relax every part of you, and you sink into that sensation. Oh, that's really simple. It's highly uncomfortable. Highly uncomfortable. That's why we avoid it, and why we've suppressed so much stuff in our lives. But You might be listening, be like, yeah, that sounds simple. Okay, I'll try that. But watch your mind. Your mind will not let you do this. Your mind's going to say, how long do I have to do this? Is this even working? Like, am I doing this right? What is this? Is this anger? Oh my gosh, this is overwhelming. I don't want to do this. It's so uncomfortable. I'll just scroll on my phone while I do this. Like, your mind will just go bonkers. So that's the part. That's the part that is the hardest to overcome, is the dominance and the over dominance of our mind, the use of our mind that we have so not obsessed over. We've ingrained ourselves to live in our mind in this world, like we all have. It's conditioning, but that's the hardest part for people to overcome, is the control of the mind in that scenario.
Yeah, I know. Joe Dispenza talks a lot about, you know, the mind serving you, not you serving the mind, and that relationship of, it wants to go. It's like a dog, right? It sees, it wants to get away, it's uncomfortable, but getting it to say, hey, no, you're not leaving yet. You're going to be here. That's when the capacity starts to grow. And I've experienced it myself, you know, like one of the telltale signs that my body is responding accordingly is that, like, I sweat a lot before an appearance. You will never see me not wear a blazer, because underneath that blazer is a soaked shirt, you know? And for me, I've just learned to, you know, once again, using the word, embrace that, not seeing it as a problem. And the reason why I called it adrenaline is because I noticed for myself and also for my clients, the same, and I was able to be there with them. So I was able to actually track this in real time when we're in social environments, and let's say they wanted to go and talk to an attractive person or someone they thought was influential. They would have these feelings, right? They called it approach anxiety, right? They had this kind of fear of rejection come up that they all evaluated as such. And I just had them pay attention to what was going on with their bodies. And then they'd go in, have the interaction. And for the interactions that went well, unless they came away with a business card or they came away with a woman's number, maybe even a date, I checked in and asked what they were feeling with their body. And nine and a half times out of 10, they were the same feelings, same sensations, right? But in the moment, one was being evaluated as anxiety and one was being evaluated as excitement, right? And so it just made me realize that our bodies produce the same sensations across various experiences, but it's how we evaluate it in the moment that matters. And so that's where I was able to kind of reframe my mind around the nerves around doing TV appearances or things like that. But I love this idea of getting to the root, right? And so there's just so many different directions I want to go with this. What was the significant root that you had to what was the most challenging emotional root that you had to face?
It's a good question. The first one that comes to my mind is anger, rage.
Interesting.
Maybe for men, this is a common one, especially for the nice guys out there, the former nice guys, the people who always were conditioned to be nice and quiet down and not like disagree with people and look up to people on pedestals, you know, so you're kind of like shoving what you really wanted to say down to be nice. And that was me. I was a quiet kid. When my grandfather committed suicide 2 years ago, he was 90 years old, committed suicide, and he was completely out of the blue. I bring this up because everyone has their own emotions that come up. A lot of sadness comes up for the whole family when that, but for me, it was rage. I was so angry at him, like for what he left the family, didn't leave a note, left us in shambles, like everyone's destroyed, like grandma's on her own, like all this stuff. And just complete rage. And the reason we hold on to, the reason we feel anger, like, because I talk about attachments. The reason we hold on to emotions is partly because of attachments we have. And the common attachment to anger is righteousness. needing to be right. It's like why everyone gets all upset politically and religiously, because I'm right, they're wrong. It's common righteousness. That's all it is. And we all have it. But I wanted to be right in so many realms, and even like academically, and like I knew better than people. I was smarter than you. Like I had judgments of other people because of this need to be right. And honestly, I say this, underneath anxiety is all kinds of emotions. It could be sadness, anger, fear. It doesn't have to be just anxiety. The anxiety you feel in your body is all kinds of stuff, embarrassment. But mine was rage, anger. I had to let go of a lot of needing to be right. I had to process out and forgive my grandfather for what he did, and understand that forgiveness isn't about right or wrong. It's not about what the other person did. It's about forgiving your judgment of what happened, your perspective, your solo perspective. Because we're in a play. Your soul is in a play. You're in a VR headset, in a way, living in this world of play, and there's all kinds of characters. And all these characters will not agree with you. They're not going to do the things you would do. They're completely different personalities, and that's beautiful if you can learn how to crack open your heart and your mind to that perspective, where I didn't see that perspective. I thought someone who commits suicide is stupid. I thought, how could they do that? I value my life. I didn't understand their perspective. I do now, not from being suicidal ever, but from just sitting in his shoes and just appreciating his role in life, appreciating that he dug a lot of this stuff out of me, and it one of the most transformative moments of my life. But yeah, anger was a big part of that.
That's so, thank you for sharing that, because I always believe that our deepest emotions, the ones that we're afraid to go down there because it's too dark and we can't see and it's so uncertain, those are the life-changing moments.
Sure.
And we always wish that they're under ideal circumstances, right? But as we know, life doesn't necessarily work out like that. And I love that you said, we're in a play. I like to call life a game. We're all players playing this game of life.
Video game. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of people play to win, and I think a lot of people also play to not lose. And those are two very different types of strategies to win to play this game, not necessarily win this game. But oftentimes it's the worst circumstances where we experience these significant changes. And I love that you said, anxiety can mean so many things, because when I think anxiety, I just think of the feeling of overwhelm, right? When you're dysregulated, nothing is working functionally, right? You're not here, like your senses are even completely disrupted because you can't hear things the right way. You can't, say things the right way, right? What you're seeing is different. Your whole experience is completely different when you're dysregulated. And that feeling of overwhelm, we have kids, and we really focus on being able to identify specific emotions, right? The importance of I call it emotional literacy, right? Being able to identify, hey, I feel angry, I feel sad, I feel hungry. And even if you're feeling all those things at the same time, still being able to identify them individually, right, is so important to understand, connect the sensations to the feelings, to then learn how to process them appropriately, right? And I know growing up, I did not have those tools. So I feel very blessed to be able to offer those tools to my daughter, as I'm sure you are too. To switch gears just a little bit, but it's a good bridge. That happened a couple years ago. I'm sure there were other things that you noticed prior to that, but when did you, where was the point in time where you realized, you know what? I'm not just good at this, I can be great at this. When did that moment or that epiphany happen for you?
That memory?
Yeah.
When I started beating past world champions. I was a part of a community on Memory League. We compete online. Like it was probably around COVID time. And I had been, training for a few years at that point. I had already won. Well, no, this is before I won my first championship. I beat Ben Pridmore, who's in the book Moonwalking with Einstein. He's a former multiple world champion.
Hmm.
And so when you beat former world champions, yeah, you're like, okay, I might be onto something. And I wasn't at the top yet. But like for those listening, if you're wanting to go somewhere, it doesn't always start out like day one. You're like, I'm going to be a world champion. I'm going to be a national champion. You just like, I wanted to be a grandmaster. I wanted to train and I didn't. I failed miserably. And then I trained a little bit more. And then I thought, wow, these ideas come in where you're like, maybe I could do that. Maybe. And like you start getting bigger and bigger carrots to chase. But yeah, I was just like incessant on improving myself. And I think, as you know, it's actually really easy to ascend in life because you pick an area and you go full force at it. And not many people are willing to persevere in that one area longer than someone who's dedicated and devoted to it.
It's true. That's very true. And yeah. Well, let's do a quick reset for those who are watching here. I'm here with 3-time U.S. memory champion John Graham. I like to call an icon of memory. But we're here talking about, performance anxiety, what that really means, training. I'm very obsessive about the journey of things. And I love the way that was one of the things I think when we first talked, like that was something that we kind of bonded on, is that there was an appreciation for the journey, the carrots, the goals, the quests, like they are what they are, and it gives us direction. But the journey of who we become in this is something that I obsess with, because I know that I can always be better. Like I can always be better, and I never release that frame. But for you, what is the journey? What has the journey been like for you, getting to a place where this became something that you really love, to, man, I'm actually pretty good at this, to, wait, I could be beating a world champion. Maybe I could be a champion myself. And then being able to do it again and again, right? Like, walk me through that journey. What was it like for you in terms of just the training? Did you have mentors? Was there a regimen that you put yourself through? Like, did you seek outside, like all the things, right? Like, let's talk about that journey, and what was your mindset in that ascension?
Yeah, so I was really good at breaking down what I needed to do to win a world or a U.S. championship. I knew what the events were involved. I knew the scores I needed and to be good at, and I worked backwards. And so the last event of the world or the U.S. championship is cards. I've talked about cards several times in this. So I needed to be good at cards, and cards is more of an advanced memory technique because you have to have a system where you convert the cards into pre-made images in your mind that you can store at a place well. This is called the memory palace. So I'm literally putting images at my front door, and then I walk inside my front door and at my couch and my TV and my lamp, like seeing it in a journey. There's your journey. The journey method. That's how you visualize and imagine and memorize things in order: numbers, cards, lists of words. You see it in a place well as imagery, and you convert it back. You walk that journey again mentally. So there's 10 disciplines in memory. I sought out the best in the world at each discipline individually.
I love that.
Found the best 2 or 3 people in the world at each event specifically, reached out to them, befriended them, asked them how they did it, interviewed them, and they told me what they did differently or how they spun it. And it gave me ideas, and then I involved it into what I like to do. And so, for example, one of the world's best at memorizing words, they use people in their memory palaces. So not just imagining their TV and their couch and their sofa and turning the word into an image there. They put a person at the TV and a different person at the lamp and a different person. So it helped you remember words faster. So it's just these little things I started training with and incorporating. And yeah, if you're learning from the best in the world as mentors, like I wasn't paying them, but I sought them out. I learned from the best. Why recreate the wheel here? And so I went at it. And 2018 was my first championship. I went up against, at the time, he was a 4-time US champion, Nelson
Wow.
Dellis, who's a friend of mine. And I had to beat him, right? And I had some luck along the way. But anyway, yeah, winning that first championship was huge validation. And then I'm like, I won one, but people think it's a fluke, so I need to win it again, right? So then my mission is win it again. And then when you win it 2 times, you're like, now it's like legacy time. Let's keep going. When I won it the 3rd time, this probably was not what you're expecting. I won it last year. I'm the reigning champion. I won it last year 3 times. Then you see the trophies behind me, right? The seahorse. That's what it is. It's not a bong. But they're seahorses, the shape of the hippocampus of the brain. I won the trophy, and I was so excited that day. Obviously all the hard work, it's amazing feeling. But
how long? I don't mean to interrupt. I'm just curious, like, how long is training for the championships, generally speaking?
How long do I train for them?
Yeah.
I mean, when I was training for my first one, I was training probably 3 hours a day on the weekends and probably minimum half hour to an hour during the week.
Okay.
Doing like flashcards of like repetition to see the images faster in my mind, or just training at 1-minute events to get speed down. A lot of speed drills. But yeah, I won that 3rd one. And then I was going to bed at night. I set it on the mantle. And I was already like, I felt like a hole. Like, not a hole. I don't like the hole, but I felt I needed another one. And I was like, this never ends, does it? You talk about me retiring. This is why I retired, is I don't need it to be somebody. I don't need to win a championship to be somebody, to have that. It doesn't resonate anymore with me, of accumulation, of achievement, like it once did. Because I was achievement and accumulation, and let's be real honest, and people may not agree, that's okay, but it's a trauma response. It's like you at your core believe you're not enough as you are, so you need to achieve money or status or fame or whatever to be somebody. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it is what it is. Like, it's why it's similar why people drink, right? To stuff things down. It's similar why people watch porn or like overeat or be busy and productive. Those are all vices, like, because of core wounding. And so anyway, coming back to this, I'm like, this never ends, does it? I'll always want more. I will always want more. My mind always wants more. And I said, I'm good. Like, this never ends. Your mind always wants something. Your wounded heart always wants something. So why am I not okay without these? That led me to the deeper questions in life of like, what's really going on here? Why do I always need something to feel happy? And where is that? How do I find fulfillment? Because it doesn't come from the external world. You can never fulfill yourself with things you can see and touch and feel. It's an inner thing.
I love that. And it's interesting to witness the journey, right? Because year 1 was, I want to be the best. Year 2 was like, kind of creating enemies, if you will, to prove them wrong.
Proving that I was somebody, proving it wasn't a fluke. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. And then the 3rd was like, no, I gotta have this one. I gotta dominate again. Right. So it kind of, all of it kind of became self-serving. Right. And then I'm sure the feeling of finally reaching there's nothing like it. Right. Because there's only a few champions. Right. When you really think about it. Right. So very few get to really experience the euphoria of being at the top and being called the best. I'm sure that feeling is unlike many things in life. But to realize, like, I want more. and you feel it, and you kind of saw that there was no end, and making that decision, I mean, that couldn't have been easy.
No, the only reason I wanted to do a forest championship was because I didn't want someone lesser than me to win. Like, see how egoic that is. Like, it's fine. Like, there's nothing wrong with that thought. But I was like, I don't want a lesser person to win than me. And okay. But I didn't feel like training anymore. I didn't resonate with all the things I was doing. Like, I loved where I came from. I love what I've accomplished. I'm not slamming it into the ground, but I'm ready for more. I'm ready for bigger things, for humanity, for myself. Because I know a lot of stuff. Like, and that's not a brag. It's like I have gone to some depths that will really help people. And memory is a cool thing to have. It's fun. Of course, it helps students, right? And I still help people with it, but there's an inner journey and an inner world of expansion through anxiety, through pressure, through past traumas or suppressed emotions that will greatly enhance and ripple out into this world. And that's where I'm at.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I remember watching your Facebook Live and you were talking about it, and the clarity in which you communicated was amazing to me, because there was a part of you that knew, one, you were the best, defending, right? Reigning, but not defending champion now, right? No longer. Two, to even outright say, like, the quality of competition will take a knock because I'm leaving, right? Like, that's ballsy. But in that same breath, you said, hey guys, step up your game, right? Mm-hmm. The opportunity is there. Do that, like, not many people would say that either, right? And I just really appreciated that, because when you strive for greatness, you want others to be great. And I think oftentimes we as a society can take greatness for granted, especially when we see it repeatedly, and we sometimes kind of also take for granted the journey. We love seeing the before and after. We fall in love with that, but no one wants to see the in between. don't show me that, because then you'll show me the reality of what actually it took, and I don't want any part of that.
Right. Well, I called people out. I said, yeah, that the level of competition was mediocre. I literally said that, and it is true. The competition in the U.S. is mediocre compared to the world stage. It's funny you mentioned that, because one of the competitors, I won't say who, messaged me, and it seemed like his comment had a little like anger to it. And I loved it, because what I said sparked a fire under his, and it lit him up. And that was the point, is like, someone will take it personally and feel it's negative and go down, and someone will hear the call to ascend higher, right? And that's kind of what I did. I was like poking people with the truth that was uncomfortable, and maybe we'll see what happens, because I want the US to be a force in memory. Without me in the competition, well, who knows? But past greats, there are other people who don't compete anymore that are great. But yeah, I took it as light a fire and inspire yourself. Don't take it as a negative, like, put it on your locker and use it as motivational fuel, whatever you need to do. But.
Absolutely. And great people who are great at what they do, I believe should communicate in that way. I really do believe, because people will take, it's a polarizing position, and I'm all about being authentically polarizing. That's one of my core values, because you want people to hear the call, and you want them to respond in a way that allows them to rise, because that's that person, their life now has changed for the better, because they interpreted it the way that you had intended to. And there's other people who read it who probably did not comment and kept those feelings of, who's this guy telling me this kind of thing, right? Like, and all of a sudden now, whether or not that'll play out into them rising, we'll see. It's not always a guarantee that they're going to limit or lower themselves, but it's certainly not a guarantee that they'll rise to the occasion. But this person who will go on to be unnamed, I think his likelihood of rising to the occasion is much higher than
I told him, I'm rooting for you. Use it. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
absolutely. And I have no problem, calling people out, because I want them to be great. And I want to be around people who are great, right? Like the people who I've had on this podcast so far, a lot of people may not know, or they're not necessarily household names, and that's okay. I'm not really looking for that. But the conversations that we get to have and the caliber of the people who are here are a testament to their individual greatness.
Mhm.
And I want those who are listening to know that you're going to hear a story and hear something from each person who comes on here. And it's going to be something that you resonate with, because you're going to realize that, oh my gosh, I have that in me. I'm sure there's a lot of people who's going to listen to this and hear John's story and realize, oh shoot, you know, what he experienced and felt, like I'm feeling that right now. And look what he's been able to do in spite of that.
Yeah.
You know, that's the greatness that we call on to people, you know, and I'm so glad that that's where, you know, I guess that leads into the next question, right? And so I know you just had a third girl. Congratulations.
Yeah.
I thank your family for having this time with you, because I know it's a lot when you have a newborn. But what's the next chapter for you? You know, what's going to be that next thing that you are going to use to elevate the world?
Yeah, just becoming a sovereign being. You know, I'm at the stage in my life where I've done all the peak performance type of stuff, and now I'm at a level of embodiment where now I'm like, and this is, you know, if you've listened to this conversation, this will make sense. All of that suppressed stuff, the conditioning, the suppressed emotions, in this video game of life, my game is to collect all of that. While everyone's like out trying to feel good or avoid what they don't want, like playing the wishing well game of life, the codes that you get from accessing all the suppressed emotion, the conditioning that we've held dormant, that's your expansion. That leads to two things. And this is what I teach people. Potential. What is potential? Because everyone's talking about reach your highest potential. And it sounds, you know, bland, but it's, people don't know what they're talking about. What potential is two things. One, your capacity to handle life. I talked about this. Number two is the attributes that you embody. Like you literally embody attributes. That you're certain, like listen to me speak. You're certain, you're authentic, you flow, you're present, you're grounded. You don't mentally force yourselves to do those things. You can't. You can't mentally perform to certainty, to authenticity, all this, because it's inauthentic. It's a mask. It's performative. Performance is a mask. It's a state, but embodiment is holding that in you. So I teach people how to access that potential. How do you expand your capacity to handle life stresses, like alchemize it, so you can handle your next up level. So you're not shutting down, you're not overwhelmed, you're not all these things, which I was, right? I went through that. That's how I know how to overcome it. And to embody traits that you need to be a leader. And so that's where I'm at. I don't have like mentors like you would think anymore, like mindset mentors. My mentor is God. Immersing in God. God gives everything you need. And like, this isn't a religious speech. All of the suppressed stuff, every moment of your life is poking and prodding you, because it's giving you everything you need to alchemize for your greatest expansion. Are you, talk about two different paths here in this video game, are you avoiding that and trying to use your mind to force certain outcomes and force yourself to feel certain things? Are you suppressing that stuff and not dealing with life? Or are you leaning into everything, the fullness of life, alchemizing it for your expansion? And that's the point I'm at. I'm ready to go higher and raise my vibration through that process, not through force and manipulation and getting into state, but by utilizing everything at my disposal. So that's I'm going to do that. And I'm going to show other people how to do that so that they can raise up this world.
I love it, bro. I love it. I love that. I love that I know you. I love that we share so many similarities, and we get to ride this journey together, man. I think it's so important to have more men, no offense to the ladies, but more men like you be this type of leader that is bold, that exudes that certainty, that power, that strong masculine energy with the compassion and understanding of what it takes to rise to the occasion, and to inspire other people to do the same. And we were talking off air about elevating the consciousness. And if you're a David Hawkins fan, you'll know that, you know, when we raise our conscious level, we naturally are raising the conscious level around us, and the levels of those around us by a lot. It takes a little, but it has a profound impact. And so I'm really excited to see this next chapter of your life unfold, man. And yeah, I'm really excited. Before we wrap up, I wanted to introduce a new segment to kind of cap things off. It's a little fun. I just thought of the name. It's called the Iconic Five, which are just 5 questions that's rapid fire. And you gave us actually a few of these answers already. So if it just shows up again, you can just say it, and that's okay.
Rapid fire. All right.
What is, in your time, right, your most iconic book?
The most iconic book. I mean, Moonwalking with Einstein started this journey for sure.
Yeah. Awesome. Most iconic mentor that you haven't met yet?
Sure. Ah, man, I don't know. I've never met Jesus. That dude embodied an unconditional love. He'd be amazing to meet for sure.
That's a good one. Most iconic game?
Game?
Yep.
Oh, gosh. The game of life, man. This is the ultimate game for this. Immerse yourself in this game.
Yeah. Love that one. This is not necessarily iconic, but it could be. But what's the thing that you're most excited about right now?
Yeah, to see how this world expands. I believe 3 years from now, we're not going to recognize this world. And that might scare some people, but I believe it's for our best. It's for our expansion. Like, we're going through an up-leveling. Everyone knows the world's crazy. That is for our highest good. And yeah, I'm excited to see where that leads.
You hear that, guys? Hold on. Or put your arms up and be ready for the roller coaster ride that's on.
Surrender to this. It's going to get wild, and you got to be emotionally ready. Everything I talked about is key here.
Yeah. I agree with you. Surrender, I think, is the gateway to personal power, you know, and so I think it starts with that. Awesome. And then lastly, but definitely not least, what's the iconic advice that you received that changed your life? Or the most?
Yeah. Michael Singer said, he told me in person, it was there at his place in Florida. He said, getting what you want is overrated. And I didn't understand what that meant. But yeah, we're using life to match our preferences. We're trying to get everything we want externally. That's the reason nothing satiates us is because we're not okay on the inside. So use life. Everything you're getting right now, whether you want it or not, is for your greatest up level. Getting what you want is overrated.
Agreed. I love it, man. Thanks for doing that with me. That was great. Now, where can people find you if they want to get to know you or reach out to you?
Yeah, there's a free guide where I talk about this alchemy, this emotional root issue that you can alchemize and expand. Go to releasepanic.com/free. So again, it's a 12-minute video, takes you in. You can try it on your own. You can realize the mind's in the way. What the heck? You can, sign up for one of my programs, reach out to me on Instagram. But yeah, this is an emotional root alchemy. Let's go beyond the mind here and take yourself to that next level.
I love it. Awesome, brother. Well, I really appreciate you. Thank you so much for being on here, man. It's always a pleasure to spend time with you. All of our conversations that we've had over the years has been enlightening, fun. I wish you were closer because I feel like we would spend definitely more time together in person, but I'll take this for now, man. I really appreciate you. Thanks again. And congrats again to your family on your 3rd edition. And yeah, man, wish you just the best of luck.
I wish you the best. This has been Soul Brother. This has been amazing. Good energy, good vibes. Listen to people like us who activate you. This is it. This is good. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, man. And for the rest of you guys, if you want to learn more about what I do and what we're doing here, you can go to theprofessionalwingman.com. But for now, you can watch other episodes of the podcast. I will leave a little bit of suspense around who will be the next guest in the podcast. But until next time, stay focused and become iconic.